Hey guys, happy Saturday. Excited to jump on here and do the recap of Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, Season 1, Episode 1, the pilot, which is epic and iconic and just amazing. I loved it. So basically, it's about Dr. Michaela Quinn. She had a practice with her father back in Boston, and he suddenly passes away, and his patients are not coming back because this was like 1865-ish, and back then you just did not hear women being doctors. They were teachers, secretaries, stay-at-home moms, kept keeping the house in place, but no one trusted a woman doctor back then. So she was looking for work and found a posting in Colorado Springs, and kind of starts out seeing her on the stagecoach and traveling to Colorado Springs out west. She kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. You see her getting off the stagecoach in a beautiful Boston dress, and the streets are just mud everywhere, so muddy. Their streets aren't paved, so it's pretty hilarious to see that. And she actually at one point falls into the mud face down, and that's kind of where we get our first glimpse of Sully. He's with the Indians over in the field by the church. They're negotiating with the army, and he kind of looks over when he sees that someone has fallen, and sees Dr. Quinn. She wasn't as warmly greeted as she thought she was going to be. They thought she was actually a male, so they thought Michaela was Michael A. Quinn. So there was a little bit of a mix-up there, but she gets boarding at a boarding house run by Charlotte Cooper, and she gets to meet her 3 children, Matthew, Colleen, and Brian. My goodness, they are the cutest. And Brian, I love the line from him where he says, "Your dress sure is dirty," and his mom gets on him about that, but he's adorable. She becomes friends with Charlotte, learns a little bit about her, how her husband left them. They haven't heard from him since, and we learned that Dr. Mike was actually engaged back in Boston when she was in medical school to David, who was also a doctor, but he signed up to go to the war and ended up dying in the war. And she kind of just tries to find her way and fit in town. So she's looking for a home, a place where she can also practice medicine as well. So she goes into Lauren Bray's mercantile store and wants to put an ad up, and he's like, there's too much up there, and because she's a woman doctor, and the townspeople are just not warming up to her. So she says, well, I found one thing that's too old to be up here, and it said, right as she said that, Sully and his wolf, he has a pet wolf, which I think is just adorable, and an Indian come in, I think it was Black Kettle, maybe, Chief Black Kettle, and Dr. Mike says, I think one thing up here has seen its days, and it had said, no dogs or Indians. And she takes it down, and then the soldier in the store takes it back from her and puts it back up. And at that time, you see Sully throwing his tomahawk, signature move for him, by the way, and you'll see that more and more as the show goes along. And he breaks it in half with his tomahawk. And but yeah, and then she goes to buy a horse from Robert E. And by the way, Lauren Bray and Robert E. and Jake Slicker have a different actor playing them in the pilot. Was not a fan because I'm just so used to the other 3 guys that play them and love them so much, but this is the only episode those 3 characters play in. The next episode you will see that it's the normal Lauren, Jake, and Robert E. playing in that. But anyway, she goes to Robert E. to buy a horse. She has trouble getting up on the horse, which is hilarious, and then you see someone coming behind her and lifting her up on the horse, and it's Sully. He has the notice that she put up in Mr. Bray's store, and she was like, did you take it down? And he's like, no, I'm answering it. And he takes her out to his old homestead. So a little background on Sully: he used to be married to Abigail Bray, who was the daughter of Lauren and Maud, and she passed away during childbirth. Her and her child both passed away. So obviously some difficult times, difficult memories for him, Lauren. Obviously they don't have any kind of relationship at the moment. That he takes her out to the old homestead, which has kind of been sitting there since she passed. He didn't ever go back. And, while they're discussing it, Dr. Mike gets off her horse and, pretty much falls down. And he says, you're going to have to learn how to take care of yourself, And then her horse starts running off and she runs after him. So that's hilarious. And she goes up to the homestead to look inside, and you can tell it's messy, dirty, hasn't been lived in a long time. And she brings out this little thing that says, M. Quinn, doctor, medicine, something. And she puts it up like right near the door and says, well, what do you think? And Sully says, well, it's not much of a shingle. And then he kind of walks off, and it's hilarious. I love Sully's one-liners as well, and it's just hilarious. Another thing that happened was, so Myra is one of the girls in Hank's saloon. Hank owns the saloon and has women, they didn't call them prostitutes back then, but that's basically what they were. They were there to entertain the men and provide their services. But she's having some woman trouble, so she asked Dr. Mike if she could help. So Dr. Mike goes in the saloon, which she's not welcome. Women are not welcome in the saloon unless they are entertaining. She goes back and does takes a look at Myra, and then she tells Hank that Myra can't entertain for about a month, and Hank doesn't like that, obviously. And then one of the guys in the saloon that was sitting there says, well, you're going to take her place, ma'am. And, the guys kind of hone in on Dr. Mike a little bit, blocking her from exiting the saloon. And all of a sudden, you see a hand come on the back of the man that's blocking her way and just throws him around. And it's Sully. And him and this guy get into the tiff. And he ends up winning, of course, because that's just Sully. But yeah, he saved her from that. She gets up in the wagon with the children. They're ready to head home. And yeah, Sully and her kind of like do this thing at the end where she's leaving and he's standing there and she says thank you, and it's just so sweet. You could tell their connection already. I'm gonna back it up a little bit before that. So Charlotte ended up getting bitten by a rattlesnake, which is very unfortunate. I loved her character. So sad we didn't get more time with her, but that just, how the show rolled and how things needed to play out. She ended up passing away, and before she did, she asked Dr. Mike to take care of her children, because as I said, Ethan was no longer in the picture. She didn't know where he was or if he was still alive. And Dr. Mike, she's like, I know nothing about children, Charlotte. And she said, please promise me. And Dr. Mike reluctantly agrees, and she ends up passing away. Matthew, Colleen, and Brian end up coming to live with her at that homestead because the boarding house, there was a lot of debt that Charlotte had, so the boarding house was closed up due to that. So then Brian ends up running away from home. He idolizes Sully, sees him as a hero, and wants to go live with Sully in the Cheyenne. So Dr. Mike finds out that he's gone, and she rides out to go look for him. The Indians find her. They think she's lost, and they kind of bring her into their camp. And they bring it into Sully's tent, who's also cloud dancing, and Chief Black Kettle are in there as well. But we don't know it's cloud dancing. They haven't said his name yet. They've only really mentioned Chief Black Kettle. Yeah, they said that they would help look for Brian as soon as the sun came up, and then they show Dr. Mike and Sully sharing a tent that night. He gives her corn, they talk a little bit, and he gives her a blanket and a place to lay. So it's just very sweet. And then the next morning, everyone's out looking for Brian. They find a piece of his clothing on the ground, and he has Wolf kind of smell it and ask him to go find Brian. So they're both following Wolf, which, again, I just love that dog, that Wolf. He's so cute. And they end up finding him. he kind of looks like fell down a cliff a little bit. He has a broken leg, but Sully pulls him up. Dr. Mike resets his leg until they can, get him back home. And then the soldiers are there, along with, Matthew went out to look for them, Jake, the Reverend, several people from town went to look for them, Lauren. And the Indians are off their reservation in a greater number than 2. So they can't go off the reservation in greater numbers than 2. So the army is about to attack. And they're, charging down this hill on their horses. And then you see Dr. Mike meet Brian with Sully. And she comes and just like, stop. And, just stops this charging group of soldiers. And then Sully also leaves Brian with Wolf. And he kind of gets in front of Dr. Mike to, take up for her. And, she, Dr. Mike apologizes on behalf of the Indians that it was her fault that they were out there, that they were helping her look for her son. And eventually, Colonel Shivington, I think was his name, tells his team to recede. So, all's well that ends well. Brian made it home. And then, Kaleem is so excited for the Christmas dance, but there was a blizzard going on during Christmas, so they were kind of stuck. You see them on Christmas. They're singing Christmas carols to kind of cheer up Colleen, and then they sit down for dinner, and they get a knock at the door, and Dr. Mike opens the door, and it's Sully. He looks cold and snowy, and she invites him in to get warm by the fire. And then he turns around and he has this cute little wolf pup for Brian. It's a gift, Christmas gift, and he says, "Merry Christmas" to Brian. And he gives Colleen, it looks like a comb that he made, and then he gives Matthew a gift as well. And then he has a gift for Dr. Mike. It says, Dr. Quinn, medicine woman, as a huge shingle kind of thing. So much bigger than what she had when she first came to the homestead. And I should mention before that Black Kettle got shot, Chief Black Kettle. And in the middle of the night, you hear someone pounding on the door. And it's Sully and Cloud Dancing and Chief Black Kettle. They said that he's been shot in the neck. So she helps him, gets the bullet out, and he gives her her Indian name, which is Medicine Woman. So that's why on the shingle, Medicine Woman. Sorry about that. Yeah. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Again, just getting to meet all of the characters and getting to know a little bit about them. Again, it's a pilot. There's so much more to come, and I'm so excited to get to talk about each episode a little bit and kind of go back down memory lane. Talk about my likes, my loves for this was obviously the Dr. Quinn and Sully scenes, and the great one-liners like Brian saying her dress is dirty. And I'm a big Sully fan. I was had a huge crush on him growing up. Who didn't, right? In the 90s. Yeah, again, my thing I did not care for was just that the characters playing, the actors playing Lauren, Robert E., and Jake were different than the rest of the series. But I'm so glad that they did change those characters out, or the actors. No offense to the actors that did play them in the pilot. But it just, I guess it's just what you're used to, So it's hard to change. The next episode coming up is, I believe, the epidemic. So where the flu, influenza comes to town. That was a big deal back then. They didn't have the resources and medications that we do now, especially out west. So it was definitely a harder thing to try and contain and to treat. So lots of goodies in that one. Can't wait to share with you. Have a great weekend, guys.